Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers,
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam Territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
I'm Zachary Adam Eisenheimer.
And I'm Naveed Mashinchi.
And we've got a packed show for you. It's a rare midweek show that we're doing, mainly because the Whitecaps aren't in action this weekend. Their next game is not until Tuesday night, so we thought we'll push another podcast out. We were going to do our football cards, but Zach is stuck at work, so he wasn't going to get back in time, so he hasn't got the cards. So you're spared that, but it means we can drag those out for even longer over the course of the season, into the playoffs, into the Whitecaps getting into the MLS Cup, because we all know that's clearly what is now going to be happening. Because it's been another exciting match day in Major League Soccer, the Wild Wild West continuing to live up to its name, tighter than a gnat's chuff. And wow, we've spoken the last two Whitecaps matches. They've headed into those games having to win because all the teams round about them just did so well. And this was another match day where this was the case. The Whitecaps were last up. And to explain how tight the West is just now, they headed into this match 9th in the West. If they'd won and Portland had lost, they'd have been 4th in the West. That is how crazy the standings are just now. And we'll get to the Whitecaps win over Minnesota in a sec. But before that, I want to do my MLS roundup to kind of set the scene for this one. Because it all started on Tuesday night. Absolutely shocking result. And potentially a horrible one for the Whitecaps in terms of standings and what's still to come. LAFC shocked Seattle Sounders 3-0 in California on Tuesday night. Brian Rodriguez, Latif Blessing had LA 2-0 up at the half. Seattle came out strong in the opening minutes of the second half, but Christian Arango got a deflected shot 6 minutes in, and that was the end of the scoring. That's his 13th goal of the season and his 7th goal in his last 4 games, so he is on fire just now. But that meant LAFC leapfrogged the Whitecaps into the playoff places. And then, as the matches kicked off on Wednesday, it did not go well. It started off not bad. Again, Dallas led a team that the Whitecaps needed them to beat. They were 1-0 up at half-time. Matt Hedges headed home. Poor stuff by the keeper Ochoa for RSL. He should have really handled that. And you're like, yes, if Dallas can pull this out, great for the Whitecaps. But we've been there before.
Release the Krylach.
Yes. 2 goals in the last 10 minutes for RSL. Krylach fired home the equaliser in the 80th minute. Then Rusnak, nice finish. One of the goals of the match day in the 90th minute. Finishing at the far corner. RSL, stunning comeback. We've talked about momentum. We've talked about confidence. This is the kind of comeback that can spark a team into the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right. It was I mean, the Krylach goal was Krylach, but like that winner from Rusnak, it was just it was a well-placed shot, but it was how he took it first time, and I think caught everyone a little bit unawares that it was coming through. And just right in the corner. And it was 90th minute too, right?
90th, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I mean,
great work from RSL.
And also RSL has the extra game compared to the other teams in the area, and also their last two home. They have two of those home games, and one against San Jose. It was basically done and dusted.
Yeah,
and,
so that's massive for them.
And Portland as well, who don't do well on the road.
We're going to look at who's got what left in the next part. So Dallas, I think what we've learned in recent games is we can't trust them to do us a favour. They can't hold on to leads, and there's no wonder that they are already eliminated from playoff contention because they're useless. They were in control of that.
They beat the Galaxy. They did beat the Galaxy. They did us a favour there. You can't tell.
But as you always tell me, Steve, everyone's beating the Galaxy these days.
That's true.
Well, Johnny Russell is. A nice brace from Johnny Russell gave Sporting Kansas City the 2-0 win over the Galaxy on Wednesday night. I can imagine after the game, Johnny was texting his good friend Ryan Gauld saying, "You're welcome," because he certainly did us a favour. And 8 straight games now with goals for Johnny Russell. It's a club record. Obviously, I'm biased. My love for Johnny is very well documented. But I don't understand how he's not back in the Scotland mix.
How old is he, Michael?
32, 33, I want to say. But, I mean, he was in the mix before. But Steve Clarke, that's in charge of the Scottish national team, doesn't seem to look too far outside UK-based players. But, I mean, in that form...
It's 31.
31. I was close. In that form, you've got to look at a guy like that to come back and get back in the mix. Whether Kansas City want him flying back and forward, because Scotland's got a huge World Cup qualifier coming up away to Moldova that if they win, they're in the playoffs. They've been struggling to get goals. You've got a guy here that's getting tons of goals. Call him up.
And Gold. Him and Gold together.
Yeah.
Exactly. MLS package.
Gold should be.
But the thing is, they could have brought Gold in from Portugal, which is closer. And
Well, that's the thing. Like, if they don't look at Gold, with all respect to MLS, the Portuguese league, I feel, has got better prestige to people looking on, say, in the Scottish team and in the UK. So if Gold's not going to get a sniff when he's in Portugal and one of the best players in that league, it's tough for him to do it when he's playing for the Whitecaps.
It's got better prestige than the Scottish league.
Totally agree.
Oh, yeah.
Scottish league's farcical at the best of times. But that was a good result.
But maybe with Johnny Russell's attention drawing Clark's viewing, maybe then Ryan Gold is getting seen more.
Well, if it's even drawing his viewing, I guess we'll see when the next squad gets announced. Then we'll cover the Timbers game because it kicked off the same time as the Whitecaps one. It was a 2-0 win. Chara opened the scoring for them in the 34th. And then goal of the night, one of the goals of the season from Asprilla, a bicycle kick, 20 yards out, his back's to goal, takes a touch, knocks it up, overhead kick, back of the net, stunning goal.
Outside the box too, right?
Yeah, 20 yards out.
If he had scored a bicycle kick with his back not to goal, I would have been shocked.
Yeah, that's very true.
The only way that goal is not goal of the year is if Abby Wambach scores a header.
Or remember this fan voting, so if an Atlanta player somehow or Seattle player poked it in from 2 yards out, that's obviously going to win.
Are Atlanta fans still that engaged?
I think they are, because if you looked at the top selling jerseys, I think there was 7 Atlanta players in the top 25. And Johnny Russell was in there as well. That's probably all the jerseys I've bought over the years. They keep getting stained. I don't understand it. But moving on, let's get to the Whitecaps in Minnesota. The meat and potatoes of the show. It was a must-win game. And really, kind of for both teams, a draw would have suited Minnesota, I think. They would have been fairly happy, but obviously they would have wanted the 3. The way that the teams played out the first half, it didn't really look like either team wanted to win. It was very cagey. But before we get into that, let's look at the lineup. We discussed what we thought the lineup might be. But so there's 2 changes made by Sartini. Godoy was seemingly fit, but he made way for Jake Nerwinski in the back three. And you know what? I didn't mind that, and I was very happy with Jake, and I thought he had a really good game. And Javane Brown also came in to kind of bolster that left side and a kind of left wing-back role. I liked those changes. We thought Brown would come in. I don't mind Jake in the back three at all.
I mean, to me, he's no Eric Godoy, so I would never choose him over Eric Godoy on an ongoing basis. But yeah, I think the biggest thing about that was having Gaspar and Brown at the wingback position enabled the Home to play where he really belongs. I think more so up top, and I think it was helpful for them.
I think it's amazing that Vanni Sartini can manage to play 3 right backs in a lineup that doesn't have a right back. That's impressive. That's coach of the year material for me right there. It's like if you can squeeze 3 right backs into a 3-4-1-2 or 2-1 formation, that's like fantastic. But yeah, the first half, cagey affair. Kind of expected that in a number of ways. Not a lot to write home about, but the Whitecaps took the lead on the stroke at half-time, and it's taken him 11 seasons, but Michael Boxall gets his first Whitecaps goal. Well done, the Kiwi. That's a goal that should never have ended up in the back of the net. That was just terrible defending. Great. Let's wind it back, though. Great ball from Russell Tybert. Inch perfect. White timed his run to perfection. I thought it was offside initially, and I was worried it was going to get called back. But no, great run by White, great anticipation, great ball by Tybert. That was all fantastic.
Great touch too.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
Forward. I was yeah.
And then Miller makes the save, and it's maybe not going to be your season when that ball just bounces off Boxall, and then it seemed to trickle so slowly, I felt, into the net. I don't know how somebody didn't manage to close that ball down. Maybe that's just my perception. It just seemed to not be a fast-paced ball.
It was just going too fast. That's the whole thing. They didn't show a great angle of the ball, because I thought it was actually going to be called back for offside, because they didn't show a real from the side kind of angle of it. But you're right. It was a good ball from Russell forward. I messaged Boxall. I was working, so when I got home, I avoided all you guys. I went home and watched the game in its entirety, and like I told you, I was gutted for Boxall, because I appreciate him as a human being. I appreciate him as a footballer. It's been great to see him grow as a footballer from his time here. And when I messaged him, I was like, oh yeah, I was gutted for you. I was like, that was all Miller's fault. And he said to me, I appreciate it, but he said, but it was my mistake to not read the ball over the top. And then he said, life goes on. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe not for him in Minnesota, but yeah. Maybe not for Adrian Heath in Minnesota, depending what happens.
For a few of those guys, bro.
Yeah, but I mean, that Vanni Sartini said at halftime in his TSN interview, we don't deserve to be in the lead, but we're in the lead. Now we have to go out and show that we deserve to be in the lead.
And he was talking about, he said he was pleased with them defensively, but not pleased with their offensive movement. And you called it a cagey first half. I'm like, I thought like the first 10, 15 minutes, it was like an enthralling game. Like it was a back and forth. They were they were going for it. They just weren't neither side was creating really clear cut chances, but it had those were the opening minutes. That's
probably fair.
Yeah, it felt like this game was as important as it was.
Yeah, but then it settled down and it came into, okay, we haven't got that breakthrough. No surprise from a Whitecaps point of view, not getting the early goal. Yeah, but then it was kind of like, don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, I think that's more what it was. You call it settle down, but I think everybody got scared. And seeing how wide open the game was, and they probably got a message from the coaches to settle the game down, and they probably just settled it way too much.
I mean, it was basically a playoff game.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it really had that feel about it.
One of the things that I did appreciate with the first half, even though Sartini was right and it wasn't on, was it feels like for the first time in a while, and maybe I just haven't noticed it as much in other games. And I had the commentary on, I had the sound on, and they were even talking about it a little bit. But you could see how they've been working at intentional movement in the attack. So when the ball goes to this player is supposed to move here and this way, and you could see it. And one time you noticed it, I forget what the combination was, but it came to Rusty in the middle, and he played this first time ball over the top, and no one made the right run or the run that they made in training. But you could tell, like, it looked like an awful pass, and many people were probably like, Rusty, what are you doing? But you could tell it was something that they had been working on, and it was intentional, and it had purpose, and it was progressive, and it was encouraging. But like Vanny said, it wasn't quite clicking the way they wanted it to, and I think they improved at least a little bit on that in the second half.
Yeah, the first half, I mean, it's what it is. You go in with a lead, you take it every single game that you do. I liked the tweet that the Whitecaps sent out after it, which was 11 years in the making, Michael Boxall's first goal. I guess you didn't really appreciate that tweet, Zach.
I go ahead, Zach. But I thought it was weird. Why? I mean,
I thought it was funny.
funny, but I don't think that would happen in Europe. Would that happen?
No.
Oh no, there have been cheeky. There's always cheeky.
Yeah, they've chosen their social media to connect with people who are looking for humor from it. Whereas for me, I'm looking for something more meaningful about a football club I follow, right? Like, but I get why it was popular, and I get why they tried it again later in the game, and then had to delete a tweet.
Well, we'll come to that tweet. It's like sometimes your humor can be hit or miss, as 483 episodes of this show demonstrate.
I noticed a number of people were questioning whether or not you were running their Twitter account for the night.
Yeah. Someone sent me it and said, as soon as I saw this, I thought of you. So it's nice, the reputation that we've got. But we'll come to that very soon.
Not we, Michael, you.
So, the second half, Whitecaps looked good, but the Galaxy were still in it, and then they crashed one off the post. Now, I said in my match report, I thought it was fortunate. It was just the width of the post that saved them. But Angus Walker said, no, I think Max would have had it covered. I don't think it was that if it had been on target, it would have been a goal. But I put this in the report on purpose, and someone picked it up. It's like the fine margins of the game. I didn't want to say fine lines. Because, like, Robbo was panned so much for that, probably because he used it a bit too much. But he's accurate with it. It's like football, all sports. It's a game of fine lines. It's a game of small margins. And it's like, Ellie hit the post, the Whitecaps immediately go up the pitch and get the set. Not Ellie. Minnesota hit the post. The Whitecaps immediately go up the pitch, and it's 2-0, and game over. And it's like, that is just the intricacies of football, and that's why we love the sport so much. But let's get to that goal. There was a lot to like about this goal as well. Dahomey driving the ball forward, plays the ball to Ryan Gauld. Gauld and White had linked up superbly all night. We spoke about it in the last show, just how good they've linked up in general. They've got this understanding. Gauld seems to know where White's going to be, or where he would expect a decent forward to be. Cuts it back. White is there. Boom. It's 2-0. Lovely goal.
Quality goal. That's all you can say. Really nice goal.
Proper place, proper time.
Yeah.
Again, he should get that tattooed.
I don't know if it was one of their progressions that they work on in training or not, but it was very nice passing, very good movement. Was it Dotson maybe? I think Dotson was like the worst player on the pitch for me for Minnesota. I think he might have been the guy covering or who should have picked up White, because White's run was coming from sort of a little bit more on the far side, and he was too open, but it was a good finish.
And it was a great goal. Everyone's emotions were just so high. It's like, oh, we've done this. We've got the 3 points, which I know is risky when you've got 27 minutes and change to go. But the way the game was going,
it felt like it.
It felt like it.
Why? You guys can tell me this, but and maybe should I ask you to ask Stuart Kerr this? But I know he had a not a great start to the year or whatever. But why is Sinclair not playing? Because to me, Miller, I've never rated Miller, even when he had some good runs with other teams.
Yeah,
I've never rated him.
I think it is just because of Sinclair's lapses, and then they went on this run. They started getting the wins, so you go with the keeper that's got you the wins.
Yeah, but the thing is they have had times when they didn't have the wins. They've gone on. They've never been that consistent. That's why they're at the bottom of the thing. So
exactly,
they should have. There's plenty of opportunities to go back to Sinclair.
To me, they've been in the playoff spots for so long now, though.
Yeah, but Sinclair was the one that got him the game last year. So there was Miller's not been perfect this year at all.
No, to me, both the goals, like that first goal, he needs to do better with what happened on that play, not bank it off his defender into the goal. And he was a little bit slow, and you could see it on his face when they we're showing the replays, or the goal goes in, and they spotlight on his face and whatever. You could see he knew he should have gotten down quicker. I'm not saying it was it wasn't a howler or anything, but when someone like Sinclair is sitting on the bench, you got to ask that question, I think.
And I mean, when the goal went in, though, everyone got really excited.
Yep.
Especially the Whitecaps Twitter, who put a tweet out which was quickly deleted. I hadn't actually seen it until everyone started sending it to me and tagging me in it. For anyone that didn't see it, it says left foot, right foot, head. He just finishes everything. Brian White could finish while thinking of the Queen. I think that's a very funny tweet, but I guess it didn't go down very well with some people.
So not a tweet that a European side would make and that an MLS side would delete.
So I'm sure that was a interesting conversation the Whitecaps probably had with their social media person today, but I found it funny. And as Zach mentioned earlier, lots of people seem to think, Michael's in charge of the Whitecaps Twitter this evening, and folks sending it to me and thinking that first person that they thought of. I appreciate that. So, Whitecaps pretty much comfortably saw out the game. It got a stoppage time though, and Fernando Adi made it interesting. It was kind of squeaky bum time with that 91st minute goal.
His first goal of the year. What happened to him being the leading goal scorer?
Was that you that tipped him for that again?
When did he even join Minnesota? I didn't even know he was playing for Minnesota.
I don't think Minnesota have really realised that he's been playing for Minnesota so far this season.
He's gotten lost in their oasis.
He's a guy, I'd take him here. I think with the right service and our team with like Gold, and he's a guy that you could probably pick up quite cheap because of the season that he's had. You don't become a bad player overnight, and what he did down in Portland, it's like...
But didn't he have some off the field issues? That's what I'm trying to think. I think there's something.
I think there was, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my head.
I can't remember how dodgy it was.
Yeah. I'll admit I was a little bit nervy because there was 2 minutes to go. And I thought, we've seen Whitecaps collapses, but this isn't your granddad's Whitecaps or your dad's Whitecaps or even our Whitecaps from a couple of weeks ago or months ago. They held on, and massive win. I don't think you can overstate the importance of this win, because the way that other results have gone, if they hadn't won this, I was ready to say that was it, their season was over.
I would agree with that. This was essentially a must-win because of the results of the previous games. If not for the LAFC game, if this win would have probably put them in a really good position. The LAFC result against Seattle definitely adjust that a little bit, but they're in 5th place right now. Yeah, so it's interesting to see like where they end up after this next set of games, because everything is like day by day. Like there's a game on Sunday, Monday, and then they play on Tuesday next.
Yeah, the games, the schedule's crap because they make so much about decision day and everything on the last day. Well, you're kind of setting things up in the week before, really. I know some of it's because they share NFL stadiums, some of the teams, and there's other issues and other things going on, but it's not ideal to be having games on a Saturday, a Sunday, a Monday, and a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And a Wednesday, actually, there's games as well. But we'll get to the lie of the land and stuff in the next part. Just want to talk about 3 players that really stood out for me in this one. Florian Ljungwirth, again, absolutely tremendous at the back. For me, get him signed up for next year. I know he's on a big ticket. I don't care. You get what you pay for. I want him here next year. He is a leader on and off the pitch, but his performances of late have just been tremendous.
I saw Axel Schuster answering to Glass City about something. Oh, he's here next year.
Did you see that?
I saw
No.
that.
Yeah, he said he signed him out. He's bringing him back next year. He said he's renewed for 1 year or something.
Awesome. Fantastic. Wow, I would have thought that would have been a bigger fanfare then than just
it was.
replying to Glass City. But excellent. That I'm delighted by that.
He did it while having some Uber Eats.
Yeah, he might have even had an option available, and they picked up the option. That's why
they will
that's why it's not a huge deal.
And I know he's on a big ticket, and we've got some big ticket centre backs, but you can't put a price on a good defence. Defences win championships. It's the old cliche, and it's like if you can keep the ball out your net, it makes it so much easier because 1-0 wins gets you 3 points. If you're shipping 2 goals a game, it just makes it so difficult for you. Ryan Gauld, he was the who scored man of the match, 7.9. Team high, 64 touches with Javane Brown, actually. 4 key passes, but just overall his play and his defensive play, everything about Gauld. He's been a little bit quiet, but I think he was showing his value to the Whitecaps last night.
Gauld, yeah, as usual, not obviously made the key pass to White for the winner, but just steady performance and just control the game in the attacking. Obviously, it wasn't that great in the first half, but second half, I thought they picked it up quite a bit.
Go ahead, Naveed.
No, I mean, I have to agree with you, Michael. Youngworth looks steady and really impressive. I still can't. I mean, Brian White is still astonishing to me, to be honest. I can't.
Yeah, 12 goals in 25 games, 8 goals in his last 9 games.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad.
Should he be getting a US call-up?
No. He's no Pepe.
Like, that's a good point. That's a great
in all seriousness, if he
yeah.
played for a team that wasn't the Whitecaps, he probably would.
No, but that doesn't make sense. The Whitecaps play in MLS, and they always call up MLS players. So
I don't think there'll be any attention to here. Although Extra Time today did dedicate the show. What has sparked the Whitecaps turnaround? I haven't listened to that yet, but it's like, holy shit, Extra Time's actually covering the Whitecaps.
Don't listen to anything Extra Time has.
But Zardes, like you got Zardes, who I think is on the national team sometimes, and he hasn't done as much as what White has done. So if he can get called up, he would be able to get called up.
But the thing is, though, I don't think that White is the kind of player that Berhalter is really looking for. And if he is, I think like I don't know, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Pifok, the guy who plays for Young Boys in Switzerland. I think there may be a little bit similar, and I think that he's never going to choose White over him. And so, you're going to have Zardes, you're going to have Pepe. Unless he like leads the Whitecaps to like an MLS Cup final or something, I don't see him getting into the US squad anytime soon.
That's the thing that annoys me though with international football, and it's the same with the Scottish team over the years as well. It's like the loyalty that's shown to players that are maybe not in form.
Yes,
it's like you call in your form guys, and they might not do it at international level, but at least you get them involved in the mix.
But yes, but it's not just that, Michael. It's not just form. It's also how you want to play and the types of players they have, the different qualities they have. And right now, I think they would say, and again, I might be my evaluation of their qualities might be off. But again, I think someone like a Pifok is probably going to get chosen ahead of a Brian White for I don't know, his extra pace, and for playing at a higher level. Debatably playing at a higher level.
But that said as well, I don't want White away. I'd like to keep him here and keep him fresh for our big playoff run to the MLS Cup.
And I don't know what Pifok's overall form is right now, but he has scored a goal that, beat Steve's United in the Europa League or the Champions League. I forget which one United's in this year, but I guess it was the Champions League.
They better make the most of it. They're not going to be in anything next year.
Yeah. But no, the one thing I wanted to say about the players you mentioned there, Michael, this was a really interesting game for me to see the kind of the difference between how Vanny and the Whitecaps have been using Gauld versus how Minnesota uses Reynoso, because both of them are like the primary point of attack, or the ideal primary point of attack. And the one thing that was different from Vancouver, which not every game is exactly like this, but yesterday, you think with someone like Gold on your team, you want to get him the ball as much as possible, and they do, right? They do, but they vary it more, and not every play has to go through him. Where it was quite clear that
everything went through Reynoso.
Yeah, it was like you could defend Minnesota a little bit easier for two reasons. One, you knew they're always going to try and get the ball to Reynoso. And then it appeared to me, if that wasn't on, then they went to their flanks. And their fullbacks, I think that Chase Gaspar not playing was huge for Vancouver, because Dotson was not good on the left, in my opinion, both going forward and at the back. You knew they were always looking for him first, so you could key on that. And then two was the thing we talked about last week, is they've run their starting 11 into the ground with Adrian's approach of best 11 plays, and you could tell. I mean, maybe part of it was playing on that wonderful surface at BC Place, but I think part of it was for sure the fact that these guys were tired, and it might not have always shown, but like, you have to imagine that played a role.
But I think that's the difference between like Heath, MDS, and then you've got Vanni Sartini. Vanni told us, yep, I think modern day football, you can't just have an 11 that you run into the ground. Heath's the old fashioned way of thinking of like, it's the business end of the season. These are the 11 guys I want to go with, obviously minus Chase Gaspar. It's going to take its toll. MLS is not like most leagues in the world because of all the little intricacies, the travel, the different climates, the different surfaces. Yeah, you'll get caught out, and I think Minnesota did.
And the thing is, it was weird because when they brought on players, you're like, oh, they have some quality on the bench. Yeah. They have an Addy who is not in form, but is arguably quality. They have Ethan Finley, who I think is a quality MLS player. They had the guy came in, he played a little bit in the middle and a little bit wide. Rosales, I don't know much about him, but he looked like he had a spark. And then there was one other player, I can't remember who the other one was, but it looked like they had some options that they could have maybe flipped the script a bit. But if they don't qualify for the playoffs, I think this will be one of the reasons why Adrian Heath, isn't brought back or let go or not renewed or whatever.
Yeah.
To me, though, I have to tell you, my MVP has to be Vanni Sartini. He is, I think, Whitecaps fan favorite by now.
Oh.
I mean, I'm sure you guys saw the social media videos after the games. I loved it.
He's fantastic. He's
quality.
It's impossible not to love the guy. He's just so much fun. He's great to chat to as well. Which, I mean, it's superb.
And he's nominated for Coach of the Year right now for MLS.
What?
Along with the other 26 coaches.
Everyone got a nomination basically, but
okay.
I heard some. I don't know if it was one of you or someone else make the comment that the fact that he was a part of the BC the League One BC announcement made it feel like this either he's going to be involved again next year, whether that's as the head coach of the first team or
he's the director of methodology, so he would be in charge of the 23s stroke the 19s. So just now that is officially his job. So yeah.
So do you think that him being involved in that announcement is pointing one way or the other, or is what he'll do next year?
Possibly.
No. I don't think it points right now. But I do think that at this point that because he's getting pieces on TSN about him and stuff like that, I think he's being going to be named the next coach at this point, because it gives the Whitecaps a free pass to get another coach in there in order to take the fall for in a year or two. I heard that his cat has a late night show coming on CTV after the Daily Show.
Frida's wonderful. I love her. So where does that Whitecaps win leave everything in the standings? What do the next 2 weeks have to come in store for everyone? Let's find out after this.
Hi, I'm Vanni Sartini, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
'cause I came here at 5:45. And I ain't gonna leave till I get my fix. All I want and all I need, all I crave is a good pub feed. All I want and all I need, all I crave is a good pub feed.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's nearly the last song because I'm actually going to feature them in Wavelength this episode. But it's our Artist of the Month for October from Australia, Queensland to be precise. It's a three-piece band, The Chats. That's a song from their 2020 debut album, High Risk Behaviour. That was Pub Feed. All I want, all I need, all I want is a good pub feed. Lyrics I'm sure Zach can really relate to. We've all been eating with Zach. Oh, I'm getting the stink eye from him. As he sits eating. Says it all. So, that big win for the Whitecaps at the weekend on Wednesday night. I don't even know what day of the week this is. Let's have a look at the MLS standings just now and where that kind of left everything. So, at the top, Kansas City lead the way, 58 points from 31 games played. Seattle now, 58 from 32, so Kansas City have a game in hand. That could be bad news for the Whitecaps, but we'll come to that. Colorado's third now, 55 points, so they're still in with a chance of first. Portland solidifying for now, fourth place, 49 points from their 32. Vancouver now up to fifth, 47 from 32. LA Galaxy, 46 from 32. Salt Lake, 45 from 31. Then outside the playoff line, but only just, Minnesota in 8th, 45 from 32. LAFC, 44 from 32. Everyone else has been eliminated. So we're still looking that the 4 playoff places are up for grabs, and there's 6 teams battling it for these spots. It's going to go down to the wire. So let's just kind of have a look at what everyone has got left to play. So Portland in 4th. They're on 49 just now. I'll give you who they're playing, and then I'll give you my prediction of points. We did this a couple of weeks ago, but we'll do it again now that there's only 2 games to go. So they're on 49. They're away to RSL next Wednesday. Then they're at home to Austin on the Sunday. I can see them getting 3 or 4 points from those games. I see them beating Austin. It's whether they take anything from RSL. I'm going to err on the optimistic and say they get a draw and give them 4 points, which would move them to 53. What about you guys? Steve?
I see them getting probably 3 points.
Wow, Steve, just to clarify, do you see them losing to RSL then, obviously?
Yeah, I think they don't play well in Portland. I mean, in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
they're
excellent at home. They've won 10 home games this year, the biggest in MLS, alongside the Whitecaps. Interestingly enough,
they have.
Some of those 10 home wins weren't even in Vancouver.
Portland has fond memories of RSL away. The first ever season, 2011, they did a flare display at RSL away that was quite unique in MLS. Yeah, I was going to give them 4 as well, but Steve might be right. It might end up being 3.
Yeah, I have a horrible feeling it's going to be 3. What about you, Naveed?
Who's RSL playing? Do you know?
RSL, they're at home to San Jose on Saturday. Then they're at home to Portland next Wednesday, and then they're away to SKC.
Okay, I say 4 points actually. I think they go all out, beat San Jose, drop a point against 2 points against Portland, I think.
Ah, okay, interesting. So the Whitecaps are on 47. We're away to LAFC on Tuesday. It was originally Monday, then it got pushed back to Tuesday. Then we're at home to Seattle next Sunday, so also it's a short turnaround. Now, again, I want to be optimistic. I can see us getting nothing from these 2 games just because of the rich vein of form that LAFC have suddenly hit, and we'll do a little preview about that shortly.
But that means we would be out of the playoffs. Right?
Yeah, I know this is how tight it is. I'd like to think we can sneak a draw somewhere in there and get a point. But I think that's my heart overruling my head. I do fear we might not get another point from these two games. Am I being too pessimistic?
What do you think the chances are? Like, which game has higher chances for us to get a point? Is LAFC way harder than us
I don't
getting
know.
points at home against Seattle?
Let's preview a little bit of that now then. Because like LAFC, they've taken 10 points from the last 4 games. They've hit form at the right time. Arango's leading the charge for them. At home, they've got 8 wins, 5 draws, 3 defeats. The Whitecaps are 2 wins, 9 draws and 5 losses on the road. LAFC's unbeaten in 5 with 3 wins and 2 draws. We've only got 1 loss and 9. So both teams are in form. I thought we were horrendous down there, but we've actually played there 4 times and we've come away with 2 2-all draws. Yeah, we got thumped 6-1 and 6-0. I think they're the outliers in this. So we have gone down there. And the last time we went down there, we did come away with a 2-all draw. It's not out with the realm of possibility that we can get a draw down there.
I think a draw would be great. Great point.
I think a draw would be massive, but
Could be a difference. Yeah.
I don't want to sound pessimistic because you forgot to mention that I called the 2-1 win against Minnesota, Michael, which I'm a little disappointed about. But
I went 3-1.
But so yeah, a lot of my predictions have been like quite optimistic and positive for the Whitecaps. But I agree with you. Like I could see them getting 0 or 1 tops out of these games. I mean,
I'm basing it on what Seattle did to us with a weakened side down there as well. And they could really be fighting for playoff positioning still.
Positioning and
maybe even the first seed still, depending on how other games go.
So then the LAFC game would be easier than that.
Yeah, I think LAFC is the best chance of us getting a point. Basically, if we get a win in LAFC, that's it. We're in the playoffs. It's not mathematically sure, but I think it... Well, actually, it might be, depending on how the other results have gone.
We never won down there, though, right?
No, 2 draws, 2 defeats.
I think they actually have a very good chance to win in LAFC because LAFC is, to me, they're still shaky at the back, even though they've kind of cut that out a little bit, but they're still shaky at the back. And I think Sartini will get the team up to play in this game, knowing and kind of position it as a winning in and just give them that little boost. And I think they will. LAFC will probably take Whitecaps for granted, and the Whitecaps could have a chance to win that game.
I mean, even as good as Seattle is, it's the last game of the season. Everything's on the line. It's a 1 game. You never know. These guys, Sartini gets them so fired up.
Oh, yeah. Like, if they have to go into that game needing 3 points or even 1 point, I'd rather if they go in needing 1 point, that's not as good as going in needing 3, as weird as that is to say. Because if you try and play to get a point against Seattle, it can soon go tits up.
But I agree. I think Sartini will have the players up for both these games. But there's being up for the games, and there's a considerable gap in quality, especially to Seattle. LAFC, depending on who's available for them, maybe not as much as it used to be.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. The game on Tuesday night, Raheem Edwards, outstanding for them. Latif Blessing, outstanding for them. When you think of LAFC, that's not the 2 players that immediately spring to mind. So, I mean, they're getting the best from all their guys as well. What are you going to say, Steve?
I was going to say that they're right now in a good form, but they've had a good form and they've dropped it all of a sudden out of nowhere too. They're like just because they're in good form right now, a week down the road, they've had a good form like since the loss at Portland when Portland beat them at home on September 29th. But that could change, and their results. While they again, I remember the San Jose game, they won the game, but they weren't very special in that game. There was a couple other games too. They barely eked out a win. So I don't see them as being in that great form.
I wonder too how much of a hindrance or how much of a boost or motivation it'll be the fact that they haven't performed in the playoffs ever in MLS. And these last two games for them really are like essentially like playoff games to get into the playoffs.
Yeah. So I mean, looking at who they've got the Caps obviously on Tuesday, and then they're away to Colorado, who could be playing for first, second, or third position at that game. This is massive for them, and they're playing catch up as well, which is never the easy thing to do.
Michael, you've talked a lot this year that you think if they don't make the playoffs or they perform poorly or they make the playoffs and don't do well again, that this could be the end of Bob Bradley with the Goats. Do you like? I wonder how much that will also weigh on the players. That potential kind of thinking, if they're allowing.
He might be gone no matter what.
But that's the thing, though. I wonder if you know how sometimes
I don't know. It depends how much they're really into Bradley.
Yeah. Because if it's a coach you like and you know that maybe his job's on the line with how you perform, that might raise your game a little bit, or
it also might
have you more motivated.
Thinking, or I might not be here if Bradley's not here because a new coach might not want me.
Exactly. So I wonder if that's going to lift them in one or both of these games.
It's such a hard one because it's all the psychology of it because they are playing catch up. So a draw, great for the Whitecaps. It leaves LAFC hanging by a ball hair.
Yeah, and LAFC, they're undefeated against LAFC this year with the Whitecaps. A win and a draw. So they haven't lost to them yet. Yeah. So all the talk about, a gulf in the class of on the roster and everything hasn't really turned into results for LAFC.
Well, LAFC's not great just now because they've lost some of their key guys, and the guys that's even been chipping in assists aren't playing at the moment or have left. The danger for the Whitecaps is if LAFC win this and then both teams lose their last match, they're tied in 47, but LAFC have the wins tiebreaker of having the extra win, which would come from beating Vancouver. So that plays into things as well.
Plus, like you said, for the Goats, they're going into Colorado, who only has one home loss all year.
Yeah.
In their last game, in addition to battling for whatever it is, second, first, whatever. So,
I don't fancy them getting anything from that. So, like, even if they beat the Whitecaps, they're tied in 47, so the Whitecaps would just need a point against Seattle.
And that's why but that's why, Michael, I also think both these coaches are saying, both Vanny and Bradley are saying, we have to win this penultimate match. We have to get 3 points in this match because it's the three that seem more on offer than based on form and standing and all that kind of stuff than what's going to be happening on the final match day on decision.
I'm looking at 8th place Minnesota, so they're in 45. They're home to Kansas City, and then they're away to somebody else, not who I've written down here.
They play the Galaxy. So essentially, for me, perfect result for the Whitecaps is the Galaxy and Minnesota lose. And then the two teams draw, and then that basically they get a point each in their last two games. That's where I see it.
Well, because the Galaxy's away to Seattle now. Seattle's form is weird at the moment, but if they don't take anything from that, it sets up a huge showdown there, and a draw would be fantastic.
Yeah,
I think 1 point for the Whitecaps from these last two games, and they're in.
I think they can pick up a win in either one of the games. I think they can. I think Seattle might, if you think of it, Seattle might be out of it. They might not even be in the running for the top spot the way they're going.
But they still, you have to think of other playoff positioning.
Yeah, second, third. I understand that, but it might be like all separated by the time of the last game, where it might not matter.
But then the other thing is, like, finishing second or third is huge because of what it means for the first two rounds potentially of the postseason
and the final.
Yeah.
To be honest, if we lose against LAFC, I look at a Seattle game as a home playoffs game.
Yeah,
exactly. We win.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good way of looking at it. Because I think RSL's in, because they're at home to San Jose, they're home to Portland, they're away to Kansas City. They're going to take at least 4 points from those, I think, just with the form that they're in.
That's the prediction, but them as well. They've had a weird form. They've been weirder than Seattle, where they lose games you expect them to win and stuff like that. So you never know about them.
Yeah, it's just so down to the wire. It's really exciting, and it's like, this is what you want. And like the East as well, I had a quick look at that today because I haven't been paying much attention. That's going to pretty much go down to the wire as well. But I still think if the Whitecaps get 1 point from these two games, that's going to be enough and they're going to be in. It's then where they finish in the pecking order, which right now you don't care. You just want them to be in it. But at the same time, I fancy them for any first round matchup apart from, say, against Seattle. So you don't want that first round thing. Whitecaps are 7th, Seattle are 2nd, and it's like Seattle's hosting Vancouver. But hey, play of football, anything can happen. Just quickly to round this part off, looking ahead to the LAFC game, we touched on it there. It's obviously a lot of rest now. They've got basically 7 days before the game. So you're talking about putting out a full strength lineup. I guess the only real decisions to make are, do you bring Godoy back into the back three? And do you bring Bikel into the midfield, or has Tybert done enough to keep his place? And I think his performance against Minnesota, he probably has done enough to keep his place. I think Godoy might be the only change we see from the team we saw against Minnesota.
I think Godoy and Janio Bikel in for Rusty and Jake.
I think Rusty's good enough. If they want to, I think Bikel's a good player to have off the bench. I do think that possibly if they want to be a little defensive, Gaspar could be the guy that doesn't start, and you put in Gutierrez.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Gutierrez is the other one I might put in.
You think so? Like Gutierrez, what's the situation? Is he like?
He's good to go, but
he came on as a sub late in the game, right?
Yeah, they're just being cautious with him. But I mean, he is good to go, but I just feel Vanny thinks there's better options ahead of him right now.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he started strong, but then he had a few up and down games. I liked Brown at the left hand side. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal going up that. He's such a good player. I think he's been the big surprise player really this year just because of his versatility. And it's something I've always said, and I said it about Russell Tybert in the past. If you're a versatile player in this league, you've got a good future in this league because budgets, caps, everything like that, you'll get games. So let's get some quick predictions and then we'll wrap this chat up. Whitecaps LAFC, I am going to go with an optimistic 1-0 draw. Steve?
I'll go 2-1 Whitecaps.
Zach?
6-2. No, I will go. I will go something crazy like 3-2 to the Goats.
Oh, David?
4-2 LAFC.
Ooh. Let's see how this plays out. It's very exciting. I'm already looking forward to it. A Tuesday night, though, is a kind of crappy time for it. The plus thing from the Whitecaps is there's going to be a few games from the other sides under the belt. Things haven't been going great in other results for the Whitecaps in the out-of-town scoreboard. Maybe this is going to be the weekend that everything goes well for them, and then they're going to go into this full of confidence. I think they'll be doing that anyway. I'm just going to split things up just now and bring you this week's Wavelength. And it's another song by The Chats. It's from their 2020 debut album, High Risk Behaviour, and it's a song with a loose football connection. But I thought, what the hell, we'll stick it in Wavelength, get another song by our Artist of the Month. It's called 4573, which is the area of Queensland that they are from. And it's a song about getting drunk, staggering around the town, seeing a football match taking place, and shouting abuse at the players from the sidelines. We've all done it, I'm sure. This is The Chats, 4573. The chat's there, 4573, wrapping up their stint as Artist of the Month. That was also this week's Wavelength. We've got a very exciting Artist of the Month coming up for November, and I'm picking them in honour of Brian White. That's all I'll say. See if any internet sleuths can work out who they might be. But we've talked Whitecaps, we've talked MLS, and that's all the positive news that's been coming out of the Whitecaps in recent weeks. And I think the feel-good factor has certainly been back amongst the team, back amongst the fan base, a lot of positive stories coming out. Hanging around in the background, though, has been the women's abuse scandal. Going back to 2008 with the women's team then, Kyra McCormick's blog had mentioned the abuse, and it was well documented in media in the last year or so. Bob Berada, the head coach at the time that was named in the allegations, his court case has now been postponed for the 9th time. It's got a date now towards the end of November, as they're still sorting through everything, which I'm led to believe, just from those that know these things much better, is not unusual, because it seems common, especially if new information is coming out, etc., etc. It's not great for the women involved that just want to get their day in court and get their stories out there. Kyra...
Isn't it also, I read, Michael, that partly because some of our laws have changed since when the alleged events took place?
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
I read that in one article that said that that's one of the reasons or potential reasons why a case like this would be delayed based on, the prosecution and the defense agreeing on.
It's an area, I don't know much at all really about Canadian law, which is why we haven't covered this as much as maybe I would have liked, maybe we should have in the show, just because my knowledge of it hasn't been great. And I kept, when we talked about, well, we talk about this in the show or whatever, and I kept saying, let's wait till the court case is done so we see the outcome of it. But of course, this has dragged on and on and on. And when Kyra did her initial blog, and then it came to the attention, in amongst it was mention of another incident at the Whitecaps in 2011. And you didn't have to be good internet sleuths to know that this was about the head coach at the time, Hubert Busby. And we'd looked at that, we'd seen it was him, and that he was still involved in the women's game. Right now, he's the head coach of the Jamaican women's national team. So that was an aspect of the story that hadn't really had a lot of coverage, and no one had really talked much about it. But a lot of the stuff that mentioned by Kyra in her blog was very similar. Inviting girls to stay in his hotel room, maybe inappropriate messages, etc., etc. So,
one of the reasons why that wasn't brought up, I think, as much is it could be because the player involved did not include their name in the group that was for Bob Barada's like a whole issue, so incident or whatever. So I think that might be the reason why that name wasn't brought up, because it was a specific person who did now bring it up today, as Joe mentioned.
Yeah. So the woman involved, American player Mallory Enoch, and she did an interview with The Guardian, Matthew Hall at The Guardian, who's been right on this case from the start. And reading it today, it's so sad to read it in light of all the other stuff that has basically come out. Martin McMahon as well from CKNW News at 11:30 did some follow-up stuff on it as well, and spoke to Mallory, and he's been in touch with the Jamaican Football Federation, who are apparently, we're recording this on Thursday night, they're apparently meeting with Hubert Busby on Friday to discuss everything. Now, we have to state Busby has denied the allegations, so we won't make any comments on anything to do with that. But I felt this is the time to chat a little bit about this, because in light of what's happened in the NWSL this year and other sports, I mean, hockey has been in the news this week for the similar stuff as well. The NWSL, the North Carolina Courage coach, Paul Riley, resigned after allegations had come out of incidents when he was with the Portland Thorns in 2015. There was sexual misconduct allegations that had been brought forward by the players. The Athletic published a story at the end of September. Two of the players, Sinead Farrelly and Mana Shim, had accused Riley of sexual coercion and harassment. Riley denies the allegations, but he was let go of his position as the Courage head coach hours after the report was published. A day later, NWSL Commissioner Lisa Baird resigned because everything seemed to point that everything was getting swept under the carpet, and it was like when he was with the Thorns, just let him go and this won't come to a head. Gavin Wilkinson stepped back from his role with the Thorns, but he's still doing his role with the Timbers, so it's just from the women's side of it. And all this came out after Washington's Richie Burke was fired for alleged misconduct that led to one former Washington Spirit player, Kaya McCulloch, speaking out. There was calls for the team owner to resign his role as CEO, but the players are wanting him to sell the team altogether. OL Reign coach Farid Ben-Stiti resigned in July after he was the subject of a player complaint, according to the Washington Post. It's just so much that's come out in the space of a couple of months. We touched on it in the last show as well. The gold medal winning team, Canada's team, got that statement to come out from Canada Soccer talking about safe sport and the investigations and everything like that. It's so much to process, and I appreciate it's four guys sitting here talking about it, and I wanted to kind of get someone like her involved and talk about this as well, but she's been out in Montreal and she's just flying back tonight, so we'll get her on the show down the line as well. It's so sad, and I know... Where do you even start to do this? Like, what needs to change? One thing I wanted to ask you, Naveed, and I don't know if you can say much at all, but obviously you're involved with the residency in the USL team towards the end of the 2000s. As a player with that, did any of these allegations, had it made it to the men's locker room? Had you heard anything about it?
Nothing. No. That's actually an interesting point. I actually thought about it sometimes, but from like my perspective, I had never heard anything about it. I didn't even know who the coach was, to be honest. Like when this whole story came up, like I had to look him out. I don't even remember.
So, I mean, Zach, you would have had interactions or known of him any from your involvement way back in the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I used to go to the women's games, especially when there were the double headers at Swangard. So yeah, I remember both these Whitecaps coaches. I didn't know them the way I've known coaches subsequent to that. Yeah, I mean, it's all of this is just sad and disturbing. I mean, we're living in this time where this is no longer, or not just impacting the local football community or the North American football community, but now you see these things, or not same, but other kind of safe sport issues coming up in North America when it comes to hockey and stuff, right?
Hockey. There's obviously the whole gymnastics thing before. Yep. There's been rowing. There's been volleyball, I believe.
So go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
As a parent and as someone who primarily works with minors, it makes me sad, like that an adult would use their position to take advantage of a young person. And it's when you hear, like, I read the article, multiple people sent me the link to the article this morning, like as I was waking up, it was in my inbox, or was in one of my message boxes, saying, hey, make sure you read this. So as I read it, again, it's heartbreaking. Like I just feel so bad for the people who've had to go through these horrendous experiences. And I think it's, obviously the safe sport thing, and no one should ever prey on young people in this way, or in the way that's being described. But also it feels like part of this, and part of this is, come from Kira McCormick from her 2019 blogs and in her blogs before that, about
where no one bothered or followed up on it.
But there's a change in how the power structure, how the power dynamic sort of works, because it's not just the safe sport in those who are. I mean, that's the primary thing. You want kids to be safe. You want young people to be safe. All that for sure.
Because remember, it's not just kids as well, because it's like young adults.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a conversation that, in addition to that feels like it's starting to happen and needs to happen in a more meaningful way, or a more nuanced and layered way, about how do you keep everyone safe, but also how do you prepare and how do you nurture young athletes to be the best? Because a lot of the tactics, a lot of the ways that has been done in the past don't seem to be, have led to maybe some of this, or have been used by some people in a negative and a dark and a evil way. But also some of them that's just been kind of the harshness and the I control your future and all that. Like some of that's just a reality of the coach dynamic, right? Like, so
but there's no getting away from that.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
So that everyone's safe and everyone understands why they're not making it to the next level, or whatever, in a way that is understandable, is fair, is maybe demonstrable, by certain metrics or whatever. But yeah,
this is all about and the recent stuff is most of it is about people covering up these incidents in order to make sure that their organization doesn't look bad, and or like in the hockey sense, they were on their way to winning a trophy at Stanley Cup, and they emphasize that more than the well-being of a player. For the Whitecaps, it was all about they thought they dealt with it the right way when it was clearly not, and they put that coach in position where he could continue this with even in a smaller thing. So, and the thing is, these coaches and for the most part, I would say the coaches, most people in these kind of things, the volunteers and the coaches, they all have the right frame of mind. They're there for the right reasons. But it's hard to pick these guys out, because until they're caught, they're going to keep doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
I will just stress here as well, both Barada and Busby have denied it, and neither of them have been.
Oh, I understand that.
I know. I just wanted us to state that.
But the fact is, it's only because these things are coming on now. If the Whitecaps had, and I'm using them as an example, you can insert Blackhawks, you can insert NWSL, Portland Thorns in that name, whatever. But if they had done their job, and it was investigated when it was fresh and everything, that this would not have gone to the next person. Like in the Blackhawks situation, they swept it under the rug. He went on to coach a high school team, and where he abused a 16-year-old. And if that had stopped at that point, it wouldn't have continued on. Yeah. The problem is these people are not looking for the player or the young person or the young player who's in a definite less advantaged position, because they're thinking their future is in stake.
Yeah, some of it's PR. It's like they're trying to manage their image, and they don't want to tarnish that image.
It's all about PR. It's all about the cover up and not putting winning ahead of everything else, and putting they're worried about it coming out and looking bad. They're not realizing that covering up is worse. The cover up is sometimes worse than the actual incident.
100%.
So
if it then comes out there's a cover up, it's like they
and Canada Soccer, you're looking at Canada Soccer. I think there was an article yesterday on TSN that they sent a letter to them, and it didn't say that they demanded. They did say they asked for an investigation, but I'm generally I feel like they probably demanded an investigation.
They've got to use their leverage, and it shouldn't have taken a celebration tour and winning a gold medal for them to get their voices heard. And I think that's the sad thing.
And the national team as well, I think they saw what was going on in NWSL, and they probably saw that as a chance to use that as well. because of everything going on there, to get Canada Soccer to investigate further. Because Canada Soccer at the time said, and I'll use this a quote that is written on the article: at the conclusion of the investigation, the coach was no longer part of the Canada Soccer, and adding that his coaching license with he didn't have a license with Canada Soccer since 2011, yet allowing him to coach at lower levels.
Yeah,
and that's not right there.
Which is even worse. Even worse. It's all bad, but it's like you're then passing it down to a level where the only checks that you get are police checks, which if you haven't been found guilty for something, you're not going to appear on a police check, so it doesn't matter.
And essentially, this is the same thing we talked about back then, and it comes out in these kind of situations too. They got to take the power out of the organization. They need to have an independent group that does nothing to do with the organization, nothing to do with the league, nothing to do with winning, and just looking out for the players. So that the way, if something does come up, that they can be free of fear for their livelihoods and be able to report the coaches. In independent investigation can always be done and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You guys have touched on the key thing in this is it feels like, and Michael, I get this is all alleged how we understand things and what we've heard, and yeah, we probably haven't heard everything or everyone's perspective anyways, but the way this is played out and why it's impacted other people down the road is because the organizations, it sounds like, this is how I hear things, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but they are worried about their own risk and liability.
Yeah.
And so they have done these what sound like limited investigations, which make them feel uncomfortable about moving forward with the coach in place, but they don't feel also comfortable firing them for cause and saying it was because they acted inappropriately or broke conduct rules in their contract or whatever. And so they do the parting ways with, right? And that means that they cannot then tell a girls team in the Lower Mainland, hey, you can't hire this coach, because if they do, then they'll be sued for defamation because there's no whatever. So it all comes back down to that initial, did they dig deep enough? Was there, and that's what the people have, the players have said, is there was no avenue for them to feel safe to fully share what was going on.
Well, this is the running theme in all these things. There's been a legal investigation, and folk are saying, well, it wasn't that thorough. So in some ways, it's just for show.
And the thing is, initially, because there was no organization back then to deal with this kind of stuff, that that all that information should have been handed over to the police so that they could do the investigation. Well, the Whitecaps.
Well, to be fair, I think in today's article, it did say that the police were involved in. There was a police investigation, I believe, whether it was 2008 or 2011. I think it was 2008. I think there was a police investigation that didn't lead to anything, but I think that was my reading of the article was that was partially due to the limited results of the initial report or investigation. And my understanding is when Vancouver and the CSA got together to have this report, when the Whitecaps did the subsequent one under pressure under 2019, like this report didn't exist, or they couldn't get it, or they couldn't find it, or no one wanted to own up to it or whatever. So it's like no one really knows. And I think the article said, and some of the tweets today from some of the media people have said, we've tried to get this report from 2008, I think it was, or 2009 or whatever, and we can't get this report. No one has ever seen it, kind of thing. And so there's a lot of big questions that hopefully...
that's concerning, as was like in the Guardian article today, it was talking about the players, and there was a copy of the email that Dan Lenarduzzi sent out that I saw somewhere, but I think Martin McMahon had shared it on Twitter.
No, there was an email that was sent to I think you're right. It was Sam Lenarduzzi or something like that.
It was Dan Lenarduzzi.
Dan Lenarduzzi. Yeah,
and it was to all the players saying Busby had been let go, and it wasn't appropriate to talk about anything in the media. Which I can see both sides of that, because you don't want players just going, oh yeah, he was a crap coach or whatever. But then because of what we know now, as to the allegation. It's like, well, is that what they were hinting at as a veiled hint of, yep, you've all heard the stuff, you just don't go public with it?
It's hard now not to say how were not harder questions asked then.
Yeah.
And I know, and Michael, you've rightly said, this feels, the 2011 Busby Jr. stuff feels like it's right now at a he said, she said thing, right? It's there's an accusation that's been made and there's been a denial. And yeah, who knows how this all plays out, but it's still incredibly saddening.
Well, it's sad, yeah, because like I had Oz Sweeney, a long-time listener to the show, had said, "Oh, have you guys heard anything more about the Whitecaps? You haven't talked much about the women's scandal, and why have the supporters groups not been pushing the club harder?" My understanding is that the players were happy with how the club had then moved after all the walkouts and stuff. And because of that, the supporters group said, well, if the players are happy, then that's the main thing here.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that not all the supporters were a part of the walkout. There were some that were surprisingly not a part of it and said, no, we just want to support the players on the pitch.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens now with the supporters, and will there be, I mean, it's a tricky thing, right?
Yeah, because again, does this go to court as well? And
no, but I mean, just like right now, Michael, right now.
Oh,
if you're a supporter and you're mad, if you have strong feelings about this,
which a few folk have contacted me on Twitter today, and they have. Right? Yeah. I've had a couple of DMs from people, and they're saying I can't in all conscience give this club any money.
Exactly. So what happened in 2019 was the supporters walked out, and they didn't care what was going on. I think this was even around. There might have even been walkouts around. Was there walkouts around the Cavalry match in the Voyageurs Cup? I can't remember now.
No, there was just no one turned up for that one.
But now going into this must-win game against Seattle, and going into a potential maybe even home playoff game, like those supporters say, my concerns over this are big enough for me to express that at a match, or by not going to a match, or by not buying this or buying that. It will be interesting to see what they choose to do or not do.
I think we won't go too much more into this just now, because I'd like to have, like, at the end of this season, I said this in the last show, like, get a couple of people on that can talk about this and what needs to change, and maybe some people that's involved in some of the teams, maybe some of the League One BC women's teams that's going to be coming out, as to what needs to change. I've seen some people throw out there that it should be female head coaches in charge of women's teams.
That's a good point, yeah.
That stops some of this. It maybe doesn't stop like bullying or whatever, because you can still have a coach that does stuff like that. But that's an interesting way of looking at it. But then is that also a short-sighted way of looking at it and saying, well, you can't trust all men's coaches? Because you've got to remember, it's a very, very, very small number. Any number is unacceptable.
So the thing is, for me, is you don't have to have a female head coach, but you should have a female on staff all the time. You shouldn't have an all-male staff. That's 100%. And then the best way to avoid this is in this example, BC Soccer has one person or two people that are in charge of hearing complaints from the players and being able to sift through that, or a committee or something like that.
Confidentially.
Confidentially.
Which I think they've set up, right? In wake
they have, yep. They acted on it. Because the thing is that there's so many people that were still involved back then that are still involved now. Some of them in different roles, like Victor Montagliani was with Canada Soccer. He's now CONCACAF and Vice President of FIFA. So he was around Canada Soccer during this time. A question to ask you, and we'll kind of wrap this little bit up. Can people have trust that the Whitecaps have changed the culture? They said that they have. Obviously, a lot of the same people are still there. You've got a fantastic person in charge of the women's programme now in Emma Humphreys, who is not going to take any shit like this. And if anything like this came to light, she would be straight dealing with it, I would imagine. She'll have the players' backs. can people have the faith that this change if no heads have rolled? Or in case of heads rolling, it might be the outcome of this court case with Barada, depending what comes out in it. There could still be things to happen, so we won't speculate too much on that. But obviously the Whitecaps are going to have a team, a women's team in League One BC. Can people have trust in this team moving forward? I'd like to think that they can.
Well, for me, I think I stated this back then, that I feel, and I'm not a person that likes people getting fired, but there should have been, back then, people who are responsible for this cover-up should have been gone, whether they resigned on their own or they got fired. I felt that then, and I felt that now. And looking at the recent stuff, again, obviously with the NHL team, the Blackhawks, people were fired. And today, the coach that was in charge of that team resigned from his coach from at another team. So he wasn't even with the same team, and he resigned from just coaching overall. So when you have like something like this where there's a cover up, obviously, and all clearly that investigation went way smoother than the Whitecaps Whitecaps investigation went, because they got to the bottom of it and they cleared everything out. And the big difference, sorry, I should mention the big difference in this case as well. The person who was accused of this has been pleaded guilty or was found guilty of that crime that against this teenager. So they have been found guilty of that. But still, I felt like back then that somebody should have been held responsible, whether it was all of them or some of them, whoever was involved. And I still feel that to this day. It hasn't changed my mind.
It goes without saying, I think, well, a couple of things. One, I agree with you, Michael, that unfortunately, nothing will happen. The Vancouver Whitecaps and those who are in the high up executive type positions that were around in 2008 and 9 and 10 and 11, nothing will happen to them unless something happens via the court case or a court case, because of how they've kept their roles in the organization for so long through so many different sporting and non-sporting issues. Nothing will change with them unless something like gets clearly defined in court, that, for example, someone broke trust or someone didn't take the responsibility that they were supposed to, or something like that. I think the allegations today are damning on many people, and they know what they did and they know what they didn't do, and they have to live with that. And I just hope one day that they will, if there are people who have done wrong, that they'll do all they can do to make that right. And not just for those who were affected in the past, but to actually do more for the future. I know some of them have taken some steps with safe sports stuff now, and that's good. But it doesn't feel like there's been really full remorse or restitution with what's happened in the past. Again, maybe because of the denial and the court case and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there are. I think this is not this is symptomatic of issues that exist there. That we won't go into all that now. But stuff has to happen to the Whitecaps. When you talk about will people have trust in Whitecaps women's team in League One BC? I agree with you that Emma Humphreys seems like someone who can be trusted and who will be quality and will do well, and the players will feel the support and will have appropriate relationships and boundaries and all that kind of stuff. But I think that there will be some, maybe many, as a result of their experience with the organization and as a result of the previous and the current allegations, who don't trust them, who don't feel like they can trust them because of all of this that's hanging over this and their experience in general. And so, I've read, I've heard from people about how this is just another reason why the Whitecaps are not a club that's worthy of their support in various forms.
I think the sad thing in all of this is, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Not necessarily from a Whitecaps perspective, just in sport in general. And I think that's the really sad thing, that there's so many stories out there that haven't come out and may never come out and probably will never come out. And that's just what's sad. So you just have to make sure that the future generations aren't going through this. And if everyone's on board with it, and everyone can actually make real change, whatever that may be, I think that's the only way forward, really. But obviously a tough subject to talk about. Would love your feedback on it, and I say we will revisit this, and if the Barada court case ever actually winds up, we can talk a bit more about things after that as well. Just to round off this episode of the show, though, I just want to do a quick roundup of some other Canadian soccer news. So Montreal have moved into the Canadian Championship final after an 8-7 penalty shootout win over Forge last night. Watched the game. Forge could have won that in normal time. They're kicking themselves. They know that they had their chances. When it came to the penalty shootout, one thing I think the penalty shootout showed is they need VAR for at least penalty shootouts, because as much as I was wanting Forge to win, Henry was off his line a couple of times for the saves that he made. And there's an assistant linesman looking at him and saying, no, it's fine. Crazy. But it was disappointing to see Montreal win.
I'm sure. I know the Canada Soccer is disappointed too, because they really wanted that all Ontario final.
Oh, yeah, they'd have loved that.
Oh, yeah. Well, plus they could have made it a double final.
Yeah, I wanted Forge to win because I was going to go in the post game and say to Bobby, so another Canadian Championship final, do you think you'll get to play it this year? But I didn't get that opportunity.
Well, one thing we learned from this is all your players have to work on penalties.
Oh yeah, there was some really bad penalties in there. Yeah. When Joel Waterman stepped up, I was like, oh, I want Forge to win, but I don't want Joel to miss this penalty. And then when it got to goalkeeper versus goalkeeper, which I always love in a penalty shootout, Henry's penalty was woeful. It was terrible, and he knew it, and he was distraught afterwards. But my favourite bit was Breza, the Montreal keeper, going with the ball to the referee and then realising it was him that had to take the penalty. And he's like, me? Oh. And then afterwards, I jumped on the post-game. I was just listening into it, and he said, yeah, I was looking at the team, and I was like, no one's stepping forward. And then I'm looking at all the guys, and I was like, oh, they've all taken penalties. It must be me.
It shows how focused he was on just trying to make saves.
He had some good saves. Montreal, good at producing goalkeepers, as we can testify here in Vancouver.
It really is a missed opportunity, though.
It is. The other semi-finals next Wednesday, TFC hosting Pacific. Pacific in a rich vein of form just now. They look a different team with Marco Bustos back.
Boy, Boosty is just... Do you guys think he will see him at MLS level?
I don't know. He wants to get back to MLS.
I really hope he gets a shot.
I do as well. It's whether he can perform at that level week in, week out in MLS. I don't know.
I could have seen him here more with MDS as coach. I don't know. I don't know with a Vanni Sartini or someone else, but
yeah, I think MDS would have maybe had a look at him. But like turning to the CPL, Pacific leading the way at the moment. Destroyed the Eddies the other night. They're on 45 points from 26 games. 2 games left to go. Home to York, should win that. And then away to Cavalry on November 7th. Massive game. We won't go into all this just now because we've done it before.
The Eddies tractor seems to be running out of gas.
Yeah.
What's going on with them? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah. We'll delve into all this at the end of the season because we'll wrap this up. Cavalry could still get home field advantage. I just want Pacific to get a home playoff game because I want to get back over to it, and I can't go over this weekend because I'm commentating the UBC game, so I'm not able to get over for their season closer. Forge, I think, are still going to finish first and be the number 1 seed. They've got 41 points, 3 games in hand on Pacific and 4 points back, but they've got to play 5 games in 18 days. It's shocking. 5 CPL games and a CONCACAF League game as well factored in that. It's insane for them. Halifax, York, and even Valor are still in with a shout for 4th. I try and not see this, but I saw a little bit of the One Soccer magazine show, and Gareth Wheeler was on it, and he was going on about, he was really criticising Halifax and York for saying, do you not want to be in the playoffs? You're playing terrible. Why? And it's like, of course they want to be in the playoffs. That's not even like analysis doing something like that. Anyway, don't start me off on another one with that. So the CPL wrapping up, exciting end to the season. Definitely check that out. Canada, World Cup qualifiers in Edmonton. Zach's obviously going through for that. Opening up more tickets, 35,000 minimum sold for each game so far. That's a great sign, Zach.
Yeah, really encouraged, excited. It would be so amazing if they can actually sell them out for both those matches. On the Alfonso watch, which I know you're interested in, Michael, and I messaged you about this week. He made his return to the starting lineup along with Leon Goretzka in Bayern Munich's midweek cup match.
Yeah,
that's all we need to talk about that.
Yeah, let's not go that far, please.
Yeah.
Oh, he did come off after 55 minutes, and 5 was an important number in this game.
Zach messaged me with the usual, what time is it? And I was like thinking to myself, not another boring Bayern 5-goal victory. This is boring watching them put goals past everyone. And then you said something else. I was like, wait, what? And then I looked up the score. It's like, Bayern's losing 5-0.
I saw it's 5-0, and I thought, like you said, I saw it on Twitter 5-0, and I thought, okay, another one. And actually, a couple hours later, I found out, what's the other way? I was like, what's going on?
It was the worst competitive loss, I think, since 1978.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this could cost the coach a job.
I know. I think he's going to be on his ear.
Well,
He'll land with Germany.
Just for you, Steve. 2 years ago, at this it was November, I think. Yeah, it was in November. Bayern lost 5-0 or 5-1, and it was Niko Kovac's last game in the job, and it was against Frankfurt, who was coached by Austria's Adi Hütter, who is currently the coach at Mönchengladbach. And Adi Hütter has been very good.
Glazed over.
He's been very, very good tactically against Bayern and getting results against them. This game was in Gladbach, which is where they played the opening kickoff game of the year, and they held Bayern to a 1-1 draw that day. So.
People said to me, I like how you always manage to turn round your talk to East Fife. Zach, though, manages to turn a Canadian World Cup qualifier chat into Bayern Munich chat somehow.
It's very relevant, Michael.
I guess. But we actually had a question that you might be able to answer, because obviously you're going through to those games in Edmonton. So someone actually asked me, do you know how they'll check vaccination status in Alberta? Is it just a case of showing your BC vaccination card?
My current understanding is yes. You'll be able to show your QR code or whatever your current thing, and you'll just need to have ID. Don't take my word on that, though. I'm going to be double checking on that just to make sure for when I get on the plane and for when I get to the stadium and go to the other places I need to go. But yeah, my understanding is that is going to be acceptable, and their readers are going to be able to read that and understand it. And yeah.
Excellent. And last little bit of Canada chat, the women are continuing their celebration tour in BC next month. It looks like they are coming to BC Place.
Is that official?
Well, Har got the scoop when she was out there, so she tweeted it out. So it's official by Har. It hasn't been confirmed by BC Soccer yet. But she said she got it from the horse's mouth. So I don't know if it was Mr. Ed or not. One for fans of the 1950s sitcom. I know my audience.
Do we know the date in November? I was really hoping that
it'll be late November because the women's international window's after the men's.
Oh yeah, I was hoping it was going to be after the January 30th men's game here.
Oh no, it's going to be in November.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's 1 or 2 games, but maybe they'll even get over to Victoria for a game there because they were meant to have some games over there, I believe, before.
I also wish they were. Oh, I guess they have to do the when I come out here and the dome while it's cold, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know who they're going to be playing either, but yeah, stay tuned for that. But
my guess is not New Zealand.
No. And Har never asked my question about Celebrity Treasure Island. I was very disappointed. And Brinley's gone now, so it's between Lance and Chris, I think, that's going to win it. 3 episodes to go. Check it out. TVNZ. Very good. Anyway, that is it for this episode of the AFTN Soccer Show. Hope you've enjoyed it. A lot of stuff covered. Just before we go, let everyone know where they can find you online and anything that you've learned this week or any final thoughts, Steve.
You can find me on Twitter at Whitecapspeed. And what I learned is Brian White, if he's not capped by the U.S., he's uncapped still. Canada could still cap him, and maybe he takes Cavallini's position on the Canadian national team as well.
Naveed?
People can find me on Twitter at @Machinchi. All I know is we need 1 point at least to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, looking that way. Zach, any final thoughts from you? Anything you've learned this week?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ZacharyAM, and I've learned that Steve's appreciation for Brian White has made him delusional.
Well, he took a Cavallini spot on the Whitecaps. Why couldn't he take it on the national team? On the bench.
I mean, he qualifies for Canada now. He's been here long enough.
Yeah, I think he has to be here like 5 years now.
I'm joking, obviously, Zach. Anyway, I am Michael McCall.
This isn't Qatar in like the early 2000s.
You get a passport. You get a passport.
No, actually, there they take away the passports.
Yes.
not for the footballers.
Okay.
It's just if we're visiting.
Well, we don't know if they're not taking
that's
away
just
the
what Simon
passports for
Fudge
the
told us,
footballers
but yeah.
too. They might be taking away their passports too.
Anyway, I'm Michael McCall. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read our stuff away from the numbers, aftn.ca. Give us a like, subscribe and follow. Turn on notifications, all that malarkey on YouTube, youtube.com/AFTN Canada. And something I learned this week, just continuing World Cup qualifier chat. As I've spoken before, I've been watching a lot of Australian and New Zealand TV shows during the pandemic. I've really got into it. So I was watching a comedy show the other day, and they had a guest on it, Archie Thompson. Do you know who Archie Thompson is? He's a Socceroo footballer. No. He scored 13 goals in Australia's 31-0 victory over American Samoa, which was turned into a movie, Next Goal Wins.
There's a book too written, so not just about that. I've read the book 31-0.
Yeah, so he scored 13 goals in that game. He's just become a pundit for the new A-League season that's going to be starting. So that's how I was watching it.
How's Ramo doing?
Well, it hasn't started yet, so he's doing really well. He's doing as good as he's probably going to do for the whole season.
Preseason's going well?
I don't know. Archie Thompson, though, scored 13 goals and was dropped for the next game. And he didn't know why. He still never got an explanation as to why. And then they played a clip of he'd scored some goals in a crucial game, and the interviewer said to him, "Oh, do you know that when you scored your winning goal, that was the exact time that the Pope died?" And he says, "Oh, maybe that was some inspiration for him to get me to get that goal. Maybe I need some more Popes to die so I can get some more goals."
Oh my!
And then they played that to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I maybe shouldn't do post-game interviews." Anyway, that is it for this week's show. Thank you as always for listening. Get in touch with us if there's anything you want to talk about from stuff that we've chatted about on AFTN Canada or aftncanada@hotmail.com. We'll be back soon after hopefully securing a playoff spot. It's touch and go. Until then, stay safe, take care, thanks for listening, and mon the Caps! Get the job done, guys.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for.
et